Dawson Rider Wiki.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Time for the next installment in my Power Rangers Team Up Rewind series. This week we are going to be talking about the Lightspeed Rescue Lost Galaxy crossover, Trakenna's Revenge, which is a very infamous crossover for all of the behind-the-scene problems and mistakes, and there's definitely some interesting stuff around there. Like, whenever Danny Slavin's involved, I feel like there's some sort of behind-the-scenes nonsense, whether it was this one or Forever Red, but there's some behind-the-scenes hiccups with all that. But honestly, setting that aside, this is honestly not a bad team-up. Like, I don't want to quite say it's underrated, because it's not like it's a secret gem, but I think it's kind of a solid team-up, and all things considered, with kind of the more messier bits and the generic bits, it's like a pretty solid premise, pretty solidly enjoyable. I think it's better than some of the modern crossovers. I enjoy it more than most of the superhero, like Ryder, Tyson, throw everything in the garbage disposal movies. Like, it's pretty solid. So we start off this episode with Leo, like, unsheathing his sword on Miranoi and getting his powers back and fighting these mysterious villains in the rain. And you can right away tell it's not Leo's voice actor. Like, when I was younger and I first saw this the first couple times, it was like confusing, because I'm like, that doesn't sound like him, but then Leo was back, so I thought it was just me, and he just sounded different, and it took me a while to realize it wasn't him. But for like 90% of the movie, if not 100, I think it's like at least 90 though, when Leo's in the helmet, it's not him. Like, it's a different voice doing it. But it's not as bad as like the Dino team-up clip show voices. But regardless, it's not him, but it's Sentai footage, and that's the thing about this team-up, is it's one of the last ones before Clash of the Red Rangers to use Sentai footage for like the core premise, which I think was honestly fine because it fit the story for what they were doing, but there were some awkward moments. But the opening scenes I thought looked really cool, like in the rain and stuff like that. After that, we check in with the Lightspeed Rangers a little bit, you know, reminding us, like, hey, they're rescuers, and Joel's the goat, because he throws down a bunch of flyers for himself. And then we get to one of the main complaints people have this crossover, is we're introduced to this little girl, and she's going to see her dad with her mom, and in the office building is where we discover there's a conspiracy that people are being kidnapped and having their life force drained, and she's sort of discovering that when her mom gets kidnapped, and she tries to tell the downstairs lady, like, monsters kidnapped my mom, and the infamous scene of this lady saying, there's no such thing as monsters in the PRU. I don't want to go on about that too much, because literally everyone has, but it's a dumb statement. And so she's frustrated because she can't find anybody to help her, and then she finds Carter, and she's kind of explaining the situation to him because he looks trustworthy, and also he's wearing a morpher. He almost didn't believe her a second, which I think makes me more mad than the lady. Like, she's like, monsters took my mom, and he's like, really? It's like, dude, you're a ranger. Like, it was only a split second. He believed her, like, immediately after, as soon as the creepo dude showed up. But still, that one almost annoyed me more than the lady not believing it. But the main, like, Triskelion, Tri-Skull villain, like, goes into, he's like, oh, I'm gonna go in disguise as the creepiest white dude of all time. And so that's not suspicious, but as soon as Carter meets this guy, he's like, yeah, there's something going on. And that's kind of one of the main complaints of the movie, not this creepy white dude. There's so much time and attention on this little girl and Carter, and more time spent on that than the Lost Galaxy Rangers. And I can't say that I disagree. I definitely would have loved to have seen more interactions between the two teams than this storyline. But I didn't mind her that much as sort of a vehicle for this conspiracy, the way that she sort of was the character that let us know all this was going on. Like, if I could change this episode, I wouldn't cut her storyline out. I would just shave part of it off to give more time to the Lost Galaxy Rangers. Then the other Lightspeed Rangers are hanging out, and they get attacked, and Leo shows up to save him, and it's actually Leo's actor this time. It's really funny because there's a scene where he fights off the ghouls, and he's like raising up the Quasar Saber, and like ever since I was little, every time when I watched this movie when I was little, I kept thinking he was about to morph, and then he just uses an attack, and that happened to me again when I watched it this time. I'm like, oh yeah, he's about to morph. I'm like, dang it! Little kid me and past me are both idiots. He meets up with all the other Rangers and sort of explains what's going on, which is Trakenna has come to Earth somehow, and somehow Trakenna has returned. But she basically is ailing from her fight with Leo, and she's trying to charge up on Earth and regain her monster form, and she's being aided by this rogue demon of Queen Banshira's, like, henchmen that we've never seen before. But I think this is a pretty cool premise, but I'll get into that in a second. And then at some point later, only Kai and Maya show up. Like, I kind of liked this in a way because one of my complaints about the Space Galaxy crossover was that I didn't like how just suddenly everyone else appeared at the end, and I wish they had just showed up earlier and we had more time with them in the first part as well. So I kind of liked the idea of, okay, here's Leo and then here's two more, but then only those two show up, and I never understood why until I understood what Sentai footage was, because the Sentai footage in the fight scene later only calls for those two to be there. But I think there could have been a workaround for that, because when they all go back and they're explaining, like, here's who Trakenna is and what happened to her. And also a note with that, when Leo explains who Trakenna is, they show a flashback of the Lost Galaxy final fight, and the voiceover of him isn't even Leo. Like, how did you do that? It's not like, oh, this is an archive from a series from 15 years ago. This is an archive from last week. How did they have the wrong voiceover for this? It's just funny to see after the Dino team-up voiceovers that were off and the Dino team-up clip show where the voiceovers were off, and then we still have this problem back in the day from literally a season ago. So that was the most glaring one to me, because how could you not just use a clip from your previous season? It's probably got some legal nonsense or whatever, but it was kind of dumb. But after they all group up at the base, they go fight the monster and some Sentai footage, and that's when you realize that only Blue and Yellow were there, so that's why the others weren't. And for some reason, like, the girl wants to come with them, and they're like, okay, let her come with us. And I thought they were going to investigate something for a split second when I was younger, but they're going into battle, why would they bring her? If it were me, I would have brought in Kendricks and Damon earlier, and then the reason I'm not in the battle is they stayed behind with the girl, and then there's a chance for more interactions with the Lost Galaxy Rangers, instead of bringing the girl to a fight where she could have got blown up. After this, they're all needing to formulate a plan on how to save these people that have been shrunken down and are having their life force drained for Trakenna's plan. And there's some dumb logic here for a couple reasons. So they say, okay, we need to get in there and save them. And then they say, we can't rush the building. There's innocent people in there. I'm like, what were you thinking you were gonna do by rushing the building? It's not like you're gonna take the Megazord and punch the building. Like, I can't imagine. I guess they didn't want to alert the villains, but they come up with this plan which was kind of smart, of like pulling the fire alarm and going in under the guise of the fire department. But I feel like because Lightspeed Rescue is an official organization, there could have been ways to go about this covertly that didn't involve endangering a little girl by sending her in to pull the fire alarm. And it just seemed dumb that they're like, well, we can't go in and endanger the people of the building. I'm like, what about the people that are having their life drained? Like, just quietly evacuate the building. Like, it was a dumb statement. They end up going in there as the fire department and saving them, and that's when, or trying to save them rather, and that's when Kendricks and Damon show up, and then they all get thrown out of the building and perfectly land on this, like, Insta-Go-Go Gadget airbed thing. And then this is very sudden. I felt the pacing was very sudden and off with this. We're like, oh, these two show up, and then we fell down, and now we're into the Sentai final fight with this Triskelion guy. But they do finish him off, and then Olympus shows up, and he ends up poisoning Trakenna's supply of life energy that she's trying to use to restore her form, causing her to become a berserk demon of Sentai footage. The Rangers fight in the Megazords. Well, first you have the Omega Megazord, and then people realize, like, dang, we use the name Omega a lot. SPD, Lightspeed, the comics, like, dang. The Lost Galaxy Rangers are like, oh, if only the Galactic Beasts were here, and then they're there. I guess they can just travel like a tardigrade through the mycelial network of Galactic Beasts or something. I don't know. Because the thing is with this is there's some, first of all, there's some awkward Sentai footage where the Torozord's cut out, but you can still see him because Magnet Defender didn't lose his powers in Gingaman, so they had to cut that out, so that's awkward. But ever since I was young, I thought that the Lost Galaxy Beast showing up was stupid, especially since 2 seconds later they just used this cool formation of the Lights of Orion on the Omega Megazord, and I just wish, instead of thinking like, okay, these dudes just showed up, that the way the Lost Galaxy Rangers helped could have just been giving the Megazord the power-up. Especially since they were already chopping the footage like onions to get rid of Torozord, I think there could have been a way to engineer the footage so that the Galaxy Rangers Zords didn't show up, and they just said, hey, we can help by powering you up with the Lights of Orion. And I thought that was a cool crossover element. I liked the Omega Rangers Zord, or the Mega Rangers, the Omega Megazord looking like that. But they defeat her, the day is saved, the Lost Galaxy Rangers have to get back home. We get some brief scenes where both Joel hits on the girls of Lost Galaxy and Damon hits on the girls of Lightspeed Rescue, and then, you know, executive producer Haim Saban, Shuki Levy, all that fun stuff. So, like, this crossover was a little bit messy because the behind-the-scenes stuff was like Trakenna's actress didn't show up or didn't want to because of pay and stuff, so they hired somebody else, which is why she's got the bird mask going on. And then Leo, like, wasn't going to be in it because of pay, and then he was, which is why, like, he's awkwardly placed in it with his, like, voiceover stuff. But honestly, all that taking into consideration, the thing that ended up being the most noticeable was Leo's voice in the mask and then the Torozord stuff. But everything else, like, honestly didn't feel that awkward to me. Like, even Trakenna, because since she was injured, it made sense that she was, like, you know, had a respiratory mask on or something. And so it didn't really matter that much to me, to be honest. And then I didn't feel that, I felt Leo, like, it physically appeared as the actor enough times that it didn't feel awkward. So, like, this team up certainly has a lot of little awkward bits to it, but I found it to be decently enjoyable. Like, one thing I really did like about this crossover was the plot of Trakenna's plan. Like, it seemed a little weird. She's like, I'm gonna destroy their precious earth, but, like, why wouldn't you not want to destroy Miranolite? But setting that aside, I did like the idea of her sort of, like, ailing on Earth and trying to get her form back, because I felt it was kind of a cool epilogue-y story for Lost Galaxy for her character, even though they didn't leave it off in a ... for her. But it made sense because it was like, her whole thing in Lost Galaxy was she was kind of this vain person who gradually grew into becoming a strong villain, who accepted this transformation she avoided most of the series, and then loved the power of it, and now she's trying to get it back, but then winds up turning into this monster when she got mixed with demon poison. So I thought it was a cool crossover villain plot that took from Lost Galaxy and continued on from, like, the storyline of that, and then also incorporated the Lightspeed Rescue villains a little bit. One little nitpick, which is more kind of a fan writing, but I would have liked to seen, rather than Olympus throwing a dagger perfectly in there, I would have liked to have seen it so that the Triskelion guy was destroyed earlier, and Olympus was, like, pretending then more so to work with Trakenna, and then, like, basically slipped the poison into her vats, and so it could have been kind of a sly thing, and sort of showing that Trakenna was just so mad with trying to get her power that she didn't notice that Olympus was deceiving her. But overall, I thought this crossover was fine. I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people make it seem to be. I think mainly, as I said at the beginning, what I would have liked to see more of was just more interactions between the Lost Galaxy and Lightspeed teams. But I thought it was decently enjoyable, a decently enjoyable plot that brought the two sides together, and it, other than some of the editing stuff, it didn't feel that clunky, and it felt kind of just like a by the numbers, like, decent team up. I would probably give it a 7. But that's about it for this one, guys. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for all my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.